one of the things you can think about is the difference between doing something's not been done well, but people recognize that they can try and make it a little bit better, or they can conceptualize a completely different way of doing it, which is not the way that's anything related to the previous way. I actually believe, maybe rightly, maybe wrongly, but I believe we don't spend enough time worrying about that question. I think we spend too many times identifying problems, and then the whole community runs after those problems. But we have very few problems that have been identified, and that's a big issue. We should be looking at the field and saying, instead of trying to make very sort of derivative, I wouldn't say very derivative, but derivative or minuscule changes to how we actually do things, can we actually start to ask ourselves the question, what if we did it a completely different way, what would the impact be? Olefin metathesis, Bob Grubb's olefin metathesis is a fantastic example that no one ever thought that making an olefin was a difficult problem. No one even conceptualized, not many people conceptualized that making olefin was really, there was even that interesting. And I always remember the first time I read Grubb's papers, I was not that impressed. I didn't really think this was particularly interesting. But it's only after a period of time you see how that changes the way you can make almost every molecule. And it's the overarching principle behind it which makes the whole field go in a completely different direction. So he identified a problem and went off and worked on it when most people hadn't even identified the problem. So the key part there is problem identification. And this goes back to my earlier quote on Eric Carrera. Once you actually can identify something which is different from everyone else, you're already way, way ahead, and that's when you really put all your resources onto trying to solve that. So for me, problem identification, or trying to identify new problems which are going to be impactful, is incredibly important.